Welcome to No Longer Conformed, my online preaching and teaching ministry. We're studying the book of Matthew, the first gospel. In this session, we'll be looking at Matthew chapter 24, verses 1 through 3, the beginning of the end. Let's read those verses. Matthew chapter 24, verses 1 through 3. Then Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came up to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said to them, "Do you not see all these things? Assuredly I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another that shall not be thrown down." Now as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us when these things will be, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age." Jesus finished his words in the temple and he left it, never to return. He departed the temple. His ministry there was finished. His disciples left the temple with him. What a lesson for all followers of Christ. The seed of the gospel message, the disciples departed with the Master. Believers should always willingly go wherever Jesus goes, and believers should also leave any place Jesus leaves. As they moved away from the Mount of Olives, the disciples called Jesus' attention to the great stones of which the temple was constructed and all the costly adornments of that beautiful building. To them, the appearance was glorious, but to the Lord, it was such a sad sight. His Father's house, which should have been a house of prayer for all nations, had become a den of thieves, and soon, unknown to all the people, would be destroyed. They were impressed with the temple's glory. Jesus also should be, but he knew so much more. The inside of the temple was stained with the priest's sin. The greater glory of the Messiah himself was overlooked. What prompted the disciples to say that? Well, possibly Jesus' words in Matthew 23:38, "See, your house is left to you desolate." He didn't depart until they drove him away. He didn't reject them until they rejected him. A few days later, the veil was torn and the Holy of Holies became unclean. How did Jesus respond to his disciples? Well, it's in verse 2. And what an eye-opener they got. "Do you not see all these things? Assuredly I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another that shall not be thrown down." Micah chapter 3 verse 12. "Therefore because of you Zion shall be plowed like a field. Jerusalem shall become heaps of ruins, and the mountain of the temple like the bare hills of the forest." Luke chapter 19 verses 41 down to verse 44. "Now as he drew near, he saw the city and wept over it, saying, if you had known, even you, especially in this your day, the things that make for your peace. But now they're hidden from your eyes. For days will come upon you when your enemies will build an embankment around you, surround you, and close you in on every side, and level you and your children within you to the ground. And they will not leave in you one stone upon another, because you did not know the time of your visitation." As Jesus spoke prophecy, his disciples were still looking at the buildings of the temple. This temple was begun by Herod the Great in 20 BC, and it was still under construction when it was destroyed in AD 70. At the time of Jesus' ministry, The temple was one of the most impressive structures in all the world. It was made of massive blocks of stone. Some measured 40 feet by 12 feet by 12 feet, and they were quarried to fit perfectly. Various buildings were of white marble. The eastern wall was covered with gold plates that reflected the morning sun, and it was seen for miles. Using retaining walls and vaults, engineers enlarged the Temple Mount area and doubled the size of the courtyard. Ornamentation of a golden vine and grape clusters was crafted to an impressive height of 6 feet. The temple structure was magnificent. The Mount of Olives was directly opposite the temple across the Kidron Valley to the east, and it gave an incredible panoramic view of Jerusalem. At the base of this hill is Gethsemane and the Garden of Jesus' Passion, about the crucifixion. Wow. Jesus' unexpected words provoked his disciples to ask 2 questions. When will these things be, and what will be the sign? This was a twofold inquiry. The sign of your coming, Jesus, and the sign of the end of the age. Chapters 24 and 25, those 2 chapters, is Jesus' answer to these questions that were gripping his disciples. These 2 chapters, chapters 24 and 25, are known theologically as the Olivet Discourse, and they contain some of the most important prophetic material in all of Scripture. How did Jesus answer them? Well, he addressed their concerns, and he did it in reverse order. First, he described the prophetic sign, actually a series of signs of his coming in verses 4 through 35 of chapter 24. The disciples thought the kingdom would appear soon. They talked of his coming in triumph as Messiah, an event they thought would occur almost immediately. They did not imagine his return was so far in the future. Destruction of the temple was not a part of their eschatology. Crucifixion, death, burial, resurrection, ascension didn't fit. They had no concept of a long intervening church age. Jesus sought to help them understand the reality of God's plan. So he described the prophetic sign with a series of signs. And then second, he answered the question regarding the timing in verse 36. He said, but of that day and hour, no one knows. Not even the angels in heaven, but my Father only. So what do we gain from this passage? Well, a promise to trust that God will fulfill his promises. And the reason for faith in that God will fulfill his promises in his time. Think about that, and you have a great day.